Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the MotoGP warm-up for the San Marino Grand Prix. The session is just underway, and bikes are heading out onto the track. Let's join our commentary team on the world feed.
Away from this Misano circuit in nearby Rimini, as you can see there, his involvement, his cause of that first corner pilot in Barcelona, he was the worst of it, actually. Nasty fractures in the left hand and in the left ankle. He had surgery earlier on this week, but as you can see, he can only be here, can't be on crutches because he's got the problem with the left hand, so he's getting around the paddock this weekend in a wheelchair, and sadly, sidelined from this weekend in Misano. And also, Lewis, more bad news for Enea Bastianini, having missed the first 5 Grand Prix with the fractured right shoulder blade. He's out for India and Japan as well, possibly even longer.
Yeah, he's missing crucial track time. That's the big thing that Enea Bastianini's been short of this year. Track time on the 2023 Ducati. You'd imagine before the crash in Barcelona happened, Bastianini would have been thinking, I've got the San Marino Grand Prix weekend coming up, which is probably his favourite circuit on the calendar, and an extra day's testing following that as well before heading off to the flyaways, and Bastianini's going to miss a good chunk of that. So a real shame to see him on the sidelines this weekend and for the foreseeable future. His place should be taken by Michele Pirro in the upcoming Grand Prix. The reason he's not replaced by him here is because Michele Pirro is one of 3 wild cards out on circuit this weekend.
The beast absent then, likewise Alex Rins, who's still missing from the LCR Honda, and Alex continuing his recovery. We heard from him, didn't we? He joined us in the comms box yesterday for FP2, and there's no clear return date for the LCR Honda man, having problems with the recovery from the serious double right fracture he had in that leg in Mugello. So you do doubt whether, well, I'm hearing actually there are big doubts about whether Alex will be in India and also in Japan, so maybe Lombok in Mandalika, a possible date for his return. We just saw there briefly, didn't we, Maverick Vinales, who's a Misano specialist, absolutely adores this 4.2 kilometre circuit, but never really got going at any stage of that 13-lap sprint yesterday. He started from 4th place, and a lot of people expected Vinales to be fighting for the victory. It never happened on the soft Michelin rear tyre, as was the entire field bar, the factory Yamahas, and just too much movement from the get-go. He said there was too much chatter, too much vibration on the throttle. He expects, a lot of riders actually were saying that the soft rear tyre yesterday was giving them a little bit more stability, particularly on gas. They didn't have the feeling that they wanted. This afternoon, over the longer distance, in the hot condition, you're going to have to run that medium-hard rear tyre, and they all believe it's going to give them less movement, a bit more stability. So Vinales looking to make amends, because a very disappointing sprint from him, Lewis.
His pace at the end of the sprint was as good as anybody's. He was lapping in the 31s at the end of the sprint, but unfortunately it just took him too long to get up to speed early on. He was a bit of a rolling roadblock early on in the sprint, as was his teammate Aleix Espargaro, until he started to get aggressive with the likes of Marc Marquez. Maverick Vinales' first 2 timed laps in the sprint, if you take out the first lap, were a 33.0 and a 32.8, and that was where all the time disappeared for Maverick Vinales. So if he can get away and get a good first couple of laps under his belt, we are pretty sure he's got the pace to run in the podium group later on this afternoon, but it's all on those first couple of laps for Top Gun later on.
And if you're wondering about the special home race livery for Ducati, of course, yellow is their traditional second colour, and they use it a lot on the 90s and World Superbikes. Great to see another legend on site. How many legends are on site here this weekend? Valentino Rossi, of course, just a short drive away from his home base in Tavullia. He got the keys to his hometown, didn't he, a few days ago, in a special ceremony here, pre-weekend in Misano. 15 times world champion Giacomo Agostini is kicking around, and now we see 5 times world champion Aussie legend Mick Doohan on site as well, of course, keeping a close eye on his son in Europe, Jack Doohan, who's doing pretty well at the moment in F2, isn't he, right now? And there's been sort of a lot of talk about him maybe potentially having a Formula 1 drive in the future. Well, if he's as good as his dad was on 2 wheels, on 4 wheels, Jack's got a brighter future ahead of him. Yeah,
he certainly looks like he's got a Formula 1 future, currently part of the Alpine programme, so they'll be taking good care of him. No surprise, as you can see, top left of your screen, that Jorge Martin has immediately jumped to the top of this warm-up session. Very early stages, of course, of it. Jorge Martin's put a 1:33.3 on the board. He leads Pecco Bagnaia and Michele Pirro. Trio of wildcards, as I mentioned this weekend. Pirro among them. We've already touched upon Dani Pedrosa, who's been one of the stars of the weekend, coming so close yesterday to a sprint podium, which would have been one of the few firsts left for Dani Pedrosa in his Grand Prix career. And the third of the wildcards is Stefan Bradl. You can see him on the left of your screen in 13th place. For Team HRC on an experimental Honda, he will have a big role tomorrow at the post-race Misano test, arguably a bigger role than he has in this Grand Prix weekend and the race coming up later on today. So it's Martin just tracking Pecco Bagnaia on that very distinctive
yellow liveried factory Ducati. Jorge Martin came into this Misano weekend with pretty low expectations. Not a great previous record here. Missed both races in 2020 after a COVID-19 positive test, and he crashed out of both here in 2021 in his rookie season and was 9th from 13th last year, so he wasn't even backing himself to be pulling up too many trees here in San Marino, but he has been the dominant force of this weekend so far. He tops the warm-up directly behind Bagnaia then with a 1:32.210. There is Marco Bezzecchi, who just a couple of key mistakes were there, particularly with 2 or 3 laps to go on the brakes into turn 4 right here into the Rio corner. Just this was where Bezzecchi lost that crucial few metres and just could not quite reel back in Jorge Martin, but given his physical condition, second place would have felt like a win for Bezzecchi.
Alright, on board with Jorge Martin now as he's in the slipstream of Pecco Bagnaia, and there's a graphic demonstration to me right there of how good Bagnaia is on the brakes as Martin began to scrub off the speed for the Quercia corner. Bagnaia just pulled several bike lengths up ahead of him before Martin then closed in as they went around the corner itself. Yellow flags are out just behind this pair in the second sector of the lap. If you ever wanted a graphic demonstration of how good Bagnaia is on the brakes and the problems Pedrosa was facing yesterday, you just saw it.
Danny Pedrosa fought so hard, didn't he, but just could not find a way safely through Polispargo. Well, his wretched weekend just goes on. That is crash number 4 then. He was down twice yesterday in that opening 15-minute qualifying session. That's why he started right at the back of the field in 23rd place. So for the 4th time this weekend, the Gas Tech 3 rider is on the floor. That's like Polispargo is okay. Yeah, there he is. He's walking away from the scene of the crime. More frustration, though, for the 32-year-old. Well, yesterday, as we mentioned, there was more than one Italian that had to ride through the pain barrier for a podium in that sprint. One of them being Marco Bezzecchi, who was a close second to Jorge Martin at the checkered flag. A different proposition, though, a tougher proposition coming his way over the full 27 laps this afternoon. Let's get some thoughts from their team manager, Pablo Nieto, who's with Simon.
He is. Pablo, in the early laps, Jorge, his pace was quite stunning, but I was surprised that Bez could regularly match him, even pull back in a few areas of the race. And he said how much pain he was in late in the sprint yesterday. So I want to know your thoughts on, will he be able to handle the full distance today? We know he's got the speed.
Yeah, we know it's going to be very, very hard. But anyway, normally Saturday they are very, very hard too, because you have to make the qualifying, the free practice, then the sprint race. Now here on Sunday you have to make 10 minutes for warm-up and then the race. So that's one point that maybe that's better for us. But anyway, it's double race, so it's 24 laps. It's going to be hard because yesterday he finished really, really tired. But anyway, home race, adrenaline, you want to make the best race here. So we will try to make our best and then we will see.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Pablo Nieto. It is going to be a tough 27 laps. If home support are going to spur him on, well, he'll have no problem. Lots and lots of 72 T-shirts in the grandstand. He's got a dedicated section of this Misano circuit just for his fan club, which is a rapidly expanding army at the moment. After this man's brilliant so far this season, he's going to go top of the timesheets, although I thought he was. 1:31.916 goes into second place. He said yesterday Martin was making the big difference in the first 2 sectors, and that's where, with those aggressive change of direction, you go right through the first corner, then hard left through turn 2, and then a quick hard right again through 3. It was there where he was really struggling on the change directions. Martin swept through. He's had a good look there, hasn't he, at the world champion? These two are your top 2 men in this MotoGP World Championship. 45 points splitting them as we go into this San Marino Grand Prix. Yeah, Bagnaia was backing out of it, wasn't he? So Martin had no choice but to sweep on through. If at the end of this Grand Prix, Pecco Bagnaia is that close to Jorge Martin, he'll see that as a job very well done. Of course, he'll now have a couple of weeks, 9-10 days or so at least, to recover ahead of the inaugural Indian Grand Prix. History made in a couple of weeks' time for the MotoGP paddock as we head to the Bud International Circuit for the very first time. India, of course, kicking off quite a hectic overseas tour. It's the first of 7 flyaway races before we get to Valencia. Will the championship be already done and dusted, as Jorge Martin's father looks on? Pretty happy with his boys' work so far this weekend, that's for sure.
Well, Pecco Bagnaia looks like he's set to top this warm-up session then. Jorge Martin will not, as he comes across the line in third place. If you'll notice on the front of Jorge Martin's Prima Pramac Ducati and on a lot of the bikes on the field, a black ribbon on the front of Jorge Martin's Ducati. That is in memory and recognition of Mike Trimby, the president and founder of IRTA, who sadly passed away late on Friday night. There was an impeccably observed minute silence on the start-finish straight here yesterday evening following his tragic passing. He'll be mourned by the whole paddock. His fingerprint on this paddock and on the Grand Prix World Championship is impossible to overstate, and he'll be missed by everyone up and down this paddock.
But the GP is the great show it is today, largely thanks to the massive contribution of one of the sport's great personalities and characters, Mike Trimby. We extend once again our sincere and deepest condolences to his wife Irene and everybody involved in the International Road Racing Teams Association. Jorge Martin, then he powers through turn number 11, the Cavone corner. Sector 4 yesterday morning in qualifying was where he was just dynamite. He was on a totally different level. There was only a couple of riders that were within a tenth of a second of him in this particular section, and at the moment he's having fun at the... Oh, that's going to go, isn't it? This lap will not count. He was just wide off the curbs. Immaterial in the warm-up session. Talk about exceeding track limits. So many riders in that short, sharp sprint yesterday. He got long lap penalties for exceeding track limits. Joan Mir, he must have broken a record. 3 long laps in 13 laps.
And I'm not sure he served all of them either.
No, I don't think he did, no. He was actually pretty fortunate at the start. Right at the back of the field, Frankie Morbidelli had a problem engaging first gear on the factory Yamaha and just sat still off the line. He had all kinds of problems. And then, fortunately, I guess you could say for Frankie, the fact that he qualified 19th meant he was not really a sitting duck in front of too many riders. Mir had to take evasive action. But yeah, Mir 23rd over the line at the end of that sprint. Just the second sprint actually so far this season, just for the record, that there was everybody that started finished. The other one being Silverstone, as Jorge Martin, then confirmation you saw that last lap, which was probably going to be the best lap of that 10-minute warm-up session, was cancelled for exceeding track limits. No bother for him though. Bagnaia, Bezzecchi and Martin, they are your front row starters. They were your top 3 men in the Tissot sprint yesterday. They're the top 3 men in this morning's warm-up, and of course the top 3 men in this year's MotoGP World Championship.
Just to pick up on the track limits point, in the sprint yesterday, 16 of the 23 riders that started the sprint got track limits warnings during that 13 lapper, and there were penalties galore. As you say, Joan Mir was given 3 long lap penalties, only served 1 of them. Frankie Morbidelli, Joan Mir, Stefan Bradl, Paul Espargaro and Johan Zarco all received penalties following the race for either repeated exceeding of track limits or exceeding on the last lap in the case of Zarco.
And they all got that penalty, and it was more points on penalty points than Mir's got for the entire season. It was quite bizarre, but it is Pecco Bagnaia then who tops this warm-up session, a 1:31.785 from Bezzecchi and Martin. The front row then just in the reverse order as a 1, 2, 3. We'll be back in around about an hour's time, all set for the Moto3 race. Join us then for all the action. Thanks for your company. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.